This demo has been created for those of you listeners who asked to see just how mixing marble dust into your linseed oil can be used instead of solvents when oil painting. This topic is discussed in Passionate Painter Podcast episode 70 with Kimberly Brooks, author of The New Oil Painting, Your Essential Guide to Materials and Safe Practices. I've been painting with a minimal use of gambol solvent since reading Kim's book, and I'm pleased with the results. The only time I use gambol or solvent these days is if I need to give my brushes a final cleaning wipe before washing them with Murphy's oil soap and warm water when I'm done with my painting session. So while I do sometimes use a small amount of gambol, it's minimal. I've been phasing it out and will continue to do so. There was actually a lot of chatter about this episode, and I was surprised that it created such a controversial buzz. There were many questions about whether using marble dust is in fact safe or more dangerous than using solvent. And there were a few snarky remarks from trolls. For myself, I'm comfortable switching to marble dust mixed into linseed oil instead of solvent. And this demo will show you how I use it in what I consider a safe manner. That said, I recommend Kim's book for a thorough explanation of the process. You can also reach out directly to Kim on the contact page of her website, which I will link to in the show notes. In addition, Kimberly's website, workshops.kimberlybrooks.com, provides workshops on oil painting and painting without solvents. Now, before we get started, disclaimer, I am not an expert in the use of marble dust and linseed oil as a substitute for solvents. I am showing you how I personally use them and the precautions I take because you, my dear listeners, were asking for a demo. I am not a hazardous materials expert and cannot tell you that marble dust is 100% safe. I know, for example, it is wise to avoid stirring the dust into the air and breathing it in. But with common sense and some precautions, I have found that it's possible to use it without stirring it up. And it's not the only way to oil paint. But it's been working for me, and I've been happy with it since I started using it. This video is purely for informational and entertainment purposes, to provide you with a demonstration on how I use it and some recommendations on keeping its use as safe as possible. Now, you can only see my hands in this demonstration, but I am wearing an N95 face mask to prevent inhaling any dust that might get stirred up. You'll also see that I'm wearing gloves, as I always do when I oil paint. This is unrelated to using marble dust, however. It's to prevent paint from getting on my skin, which is likely to trigger an allergy reaction due to the fact that I struggle with contact dermatitis on my hands. Now, in addition to the mask, I do keep an air purifier in my studio to help keep the air as clean and safe as possible. My air purifier is a Winix Plasma Wave 5500-2. That's the model number. It has a HEPA filter, and it's designed to reduce VOCs, volatile organic compounds, such as solvents, as well as to catch airborne particles. I got mine at winixamerica.com, which I'll link to in the show notes. And it was actually not as expensive as I'd expected. I got it about 4 years ago, and it was under $200. You can still get it for less than $200. And given what it does for my studio, I consider it well worth it. Now, this is not an affiliate link. I'm simply sharing my satisfaction with this product. You can purchase the Plasma Wave from Amazon.com and other online marketplaces. And of course, having this filter in my studio doesn't mean I can be careless in stirring up stone dust or leaving solvents uncovered. I'm still cautious with both whenever I use them. But I personally recommend air purifiers in art studios in which any VOCs or airborne particle products may be present. Okay, so first you'll see me squeezing out a puddle of linseed oil. Next, I'll take a small scoop of marble dust. I keep it in a Ziploc bag, and carefully pour it onto the oil from as close to the oil as I can get to avoid the dust getting stirred up into the air. You can see that this dust is very fine. I would compare it to the consistency of confectioner's sugar. You can also see that using it carefully in this way is not creating an enormous dust cloud. Now I'm closing the bag, and you'll see that I'm not zipping the Ziploc across in a swift movement, as that can cause a rush of air that might send marble dust into the air. I'm just snapping my way across the bag to close it. You can use any container that you're comfortable with here. Next, I'm folding the linseed oil over the dust, mixing the two together carefully to saturate the dust and keep it safely mixed into the oil, and thus out of the air. Look at the consistency of the final mixture. I would describe it as a little more thinned out than, say, the liquid acrylic paint you can pick up in small plastic bottles from craft stores. Naturally, you can mix less dust into more oil for a thinner mixture if you like. My mixtures vary each time, but generally this is about the consistency of how I mix it. Now you'll see me mixing up paint and taking swipes of the mixture with my palette knife to mix into the paint for a smooth paint consistency. It makes the paint buttery and spreadable without it losing the pigment intensity as it would when broken down because it's been thinned by solvent, which, as Kimberly has pointed out in her book and in our chat, actually breaks down the bonds of the pigments. You can see as I rough the paint into my painting to block it out that it's thin enough to spread but not transparent. This is my first rough-in, so you're not going to see much here, but you can see that the paint is at a workable consistency. As you get farther along into your paintings, you can let layers dry and glaze on top of dry paint using this oil and marble mixture. As Kim says in the episode and in the book, the dust particles allow for the paint to adhere and suspend themselves throughout the oil for a wonderful glazing effect. I'm not demonstrating glazing here. Though fun and capable of creating rich layers, glazing is not necessary if you don't want to use it. What I'm showing you is the beginning stage of a painting, so you can see how you can indeed thin out your paints for the block-in of a new painting without losing chroma or intensity in your pigments. Using the principle of fat over lean, where the thinnest layer of paint is on the bottom to prevent cracking and problems with your paint adhesion, this block-in layer should be thinner than the paint that goes on top of it. So this is where we want to make sure we're going to be able to get the paint nice and thin. And for me, using marble dust mixed into linseed oil has worked. I hope this demo was helpful. I'd like to thank my curious listeners who asked lots of questions and asked for a demo. In closing, thank you for your interest in this podcast and Kim's methods. Again, I highly recommend you pick up a copy of her book, which will be linked in the show notes, along with her contact page. Join me next time for an interview with collage artist G.J. Gillespie. Don't forget to join my Podcast Insider Circle for free downloadable ebooks, cheat sheets, and checklists exclusively for my podcast insiders and students. You'll also receive a reusable coupon for the lowest price available on all of my self-paced online courses. Sign up for free in the sidebar at passionatepainterpodcast.com. Until next time, go make something.